want you to appreciate your own life too. Every moment right now is nothing other than us, our practice, our life, our realization, our manifestation. Refresh it each moment. Having such a practice not only benefits you and gives you joy, it also inspires others. And vice versa. When you live this way, your life will become very different and you will not complain about things. You will become more tolerant and generous. If anything does not go well, you will see this. You will see this I as the responsible person. You will see the other shore as your life this very moment. So regardless of the situation, when you close the gap, you can take any situation as the Buddha's life and manage it well. This is from Hakuyū Taizan Maezumi Roshi's book, Appreciate Your Life, from 2001. Perhaps, if we like, we can appreciate what Roshi means by this closing the gap. He says, when you close the gap, you can take any situation as the Buddha's life and manage it well. How do I close the gap? What does that mean? I know in the metro in Hong Kong, they tell you to mind the gap. Same thing in London. I think it's a different gap. I've looked forward to this talk for a number of reasons. Maezumi Roshi is the founder of our White Plum lineage that some of us belong to, which is one of the major lines of Zen in America. And he was a direct link, the direct link to Japan. White Plum by no means is the only Zen line in America. There are numerous, and perhaps in time we'll be able to talk about some of the others. But I've also been looking forward to this because I had the good fortune to live at Zen Center of LA and to practice with him very briefly at a crucial time. I was going to say at a crucial time for him in 1984, but it was for me too, actually. When we talked about Yasutani last week, we suggested he was one of Maezumi Roshi's 3 teachers, and the other 2 being Koryu Roshi and Maezumi Roshi's father, Kuroda Roshi. So in his lifetime, he had 3 teachers. Yasutani was the last one. We also talked that Yasutani was transmitted in both Rinzai and Soto schools of Zen, and then started the Sanbo Kyodan school, which was really a blending of those 2 schools. And this was the way Maezumi practiced, and this is the way that he taught. And this is why our practice has the unique feel that it does, and some of the characteristics of both Rinzai practice, which is really more strictly the koan system, and Soto Zen practice, which is shikantaza, or silent illumination, or just sitting. Roshi was born in Japan in 1931 and came to the U.S. when he was 25 years old to assist at Zenshuji, which was the headquarters of the United States Soto Zen Mission, located in downtown Los Angeles. And at the time, Zenshuji in downtown LA and the temple in San Francisco were almost entirely, if not exclusively, attended by Japanese Americans. So he really came to help the Japanese American parishioners, if you will. And those temples performed a lot of different services and ceremonies for the congregation: marriages, funerals, other coming of age or rites of passage kind of events and social events and probably prayer and memorial and things like that, but not so much Zazen. Um, Maezumi Roshi had begun his koan study when he was a teenager. I think he was 16 years old when he started. And when he came here, he didn't speak English. Um, so he enrolled at City College in Pasadena for a couple of years and learned English and then moved around a bit. He went to San Francisco where uh, he met Suzuki Roshi in the 50s. And some of you know of Nyogen Senzaki. He met Nyogen Senzaki, and Nyogen had a, they only had a couple of years of being friends together, but Nyogen had a big influence on him before he passed away in 1958. As I mentioned, Zazen was not that commonplace in the Japanese American congregations here in the US, despite that they were called Zen temples. But in 1962, Maezumi Roshi, who was not the head priest there, I think he was, a young assistant priest, uh, he began holding Zazen sitting periods. And as everyone here knows, in those years, culturally in the United States, things were changing and shifting. And by 1967, due to prevailing, let's say, countercultural influences and interest from non-Japanese Americans, he'd attracted a number of Western students, including Bernie Glassman. And they decided to move out of Japantown in downtown LA into the Wilshire district onto Serrano Street. And they incorporated in 1968 as the Zen Center of Los Angeles. And they grew very quickly, eventually moving a few blocks away over to Normandy Avenue. And sort of at the peak of Zen Center Los Angeles, they occupied most of an entire city block in the Wilshire district. Throughout this time, Maezumi Roshi continued his studies with Yasutani, going back to Japan to study with him, and he finally received Inca from him in Japan in 1970. But right from the beginning, Zen Center Los Angeles, and this really reflects the three teachers in this line, Harada Roshi, Yasutani Roshi, and Maezumi Roshi, it developed really uniquely from its Japanese predecessor temples. And Zen Center LA and San Francisco was like this too, had various businesses associated or with it or attached to it, including a plumbing company and a carpentry company, a bookstore, a scholarly institute, and a publishing company, and more. And Maezumi Roshi said about this, he said, Buddhism in the East has traditionally emphasized the enlightened one and his teachings, while American practice seems to express itself especially in community. The challenges involved are numerous and difficult, but the opportunities seem unlimited. So really from the beginning with his Western students, he was wide open to Americans and to experimenting and to not setting aside the traditional, but certainly embracing the current and the future. During Maezumi Roshi's teaching life, let's say between then, 1968 and 1995, he named 12 Dharma successors, ordained 68 priests, and administered jukai to over 500 people. Those original 12 successors, and we know many of these. This is Bernie Glassman and Daido Roshi and Shishin Roshi here in Boulder, and Joko Beck and Chosen Bays Roshi. and others. Those 12 successors had their own successors, and now that entire community, called the White Plum Asanga, is well over 100 teachers. I think it's more like 150 teachers. James Ishmael Ford says about this, and he's talking about Maezumi Roshi, his influence on the shape of Western Zen is incalculable. Again, last week we talked about Yasutani Roshi, and I didn't include it in my original comments. There was a question that came up, and I really appreciated the question, really about some of the controversy surrounding Yasutani and his support for militarism and claims of his anti-Semitism and some other issues that surrounded him. Maezumi Roshi also had his major flaws, and I'll mention those here just so this is complete. In 1983, just frankly, the year I arrived there at CCLA, Maezumi Roshi admitted to being alcoholic and entered the Betty Ford Center for rehabilitation. He also admitted to having had, or probably still having at the time, improper relations with senior female students. And none of this did he ever defend or deny. He faced it and owned what he was doing and had done. Nonetheless, it still disrupted the community enormously, and really many people left. His daughter, I believe her name is Kyrie, said of him, "He was not a good father or a good husband to my mother, but he was an outstanding teacher with a love for the Dharma and a wisdom and a vision of liberation that took precedence in all he did." My experience of him was of a person who was enormously kind and endlessly patient. He'd accomplished so much by the time I met him, and then had just gone through this enormous turmoil. But he still took time to attend to this new student who was frankly lost. And he was solid and powerful, as you can see from some of those images before. But he was also incredibly soft and warm. And my favorite, I have images in my memory of him. The two that are my favorite, one of them is holding my daughter at a baby blessing ceremony in 1984. And the other, and he was a gardener. He gardened all the time. He'd be out there in his Japanese work pants and a white V-neck t-shirt. And he'd look up and smile and wave when you went by, no matter who you were. His Dharma name is Taizan, or in Chinese, Dashan. It means great mountain. Shishin Roshi named his temple for his teacher. Great Mountain Zen Center is Taizanji. A sad irony of Roshi's life is that even after undergoing treatment and being in recovery for alcoholism, he continued to drink excessively, and in fact, under the influence, he died in a hot pool in Japan as a result of that. But what he left us is beautiful teachings, which are both deep and varied, but always, in my view, always accessible and personal. They're just extraordinary. He's really well published, and I value his written teaching highly. They are probably my favorite Dharma books because they are uh, so immediately accessible. And if you're interested after, there's about three of them that I would recommend right off. So I'd like to, rather than having me talk much more, I'd like to end with a short, it's a 2 pages, short chapter uh, from Roshi's book, Appreciate Your Life, and then we'll wrap up. And this is called Where is the Hindrance? Our life is usually so hectic that we quite easily lose ourselves. Zazen is a wonderful opportunity to face and closely study ourselves. In a way, it is almost a joke to have to find out who we are or to realize what our life is. Our life, this life, is already in realization. It is already manifesting. So what's there to look for? When we look for something, Buddha calls this delusion. Unfortunately, this is what all of us do in one way or another. There's an interesting koan in the Blue Cliff record, a dialogue between Master Kyosei and a monk, and the monk asks, I want to peck from the inside. Would you please tap from the outside? When an egg is ready to hatch, the chick inside pecks at the shell, and the mother hen senses it and taps on the outside. When it is time, just a little tap on the outside breaks the shell, and the chick hatches. If the shell breaks too soon or too late, the chick dies. So the monk said, please tap from the outside. Master Kyosei says, will you be alive? The monk answers, if not, I'll be ridiculed. Master Kyosei replies, you also are one of those in the weeds. Roshi says, what is the point of this koan? I am ready, and then it quotes, I am ready, please let me come out. Where is the shell? Where is the hindrance? What is keeping you imprisoned? There's an expression in Japanese, without a rope, people bind themselves. You do not think you are completely free, so you practice trying to liberate yourself. What is binding you? Look around you. Nothing is binding you. And yet you cannot see it. You feel as if you are bound by something. Buddha calls this delusion. Your mind is not in the right place. In our practice, we hold sesshin, an intensive Zen retreat, which means sesshin means to join or unify the mind. It can also mean to put the mind in the place where the mind belongs. Of course, the mind is already unified or in the right place, but nevertheless, we practice in this way. How do you put your mind in the right place? Where is the right place? Right here is always the place. This place or space of right here extends endlessly throughout the 10 directions, the whole universe. This limited place of right here becomes universal, the existence of the cosmos. It is not limited to a particular race, culture, or country, and right now is the time. The infinite time span from past to future is reduced to this very moment, right now. Vice versa is also true. The moment of right now contains all the beginningless past and the endless future. It is universal. For instance, one of the most important dharmas is the law of causation, of cause and effect. everything is the cause of something and the effect of something. So in one way or another, everything is connected. The Japanese word for karma is inen. In is a direct cause or causes, and nen is an indirect cause or causes. All of these direct and indirect causes are present for each action. We say cause and effect are not two separate things, or we say cause and effect are one. For example, when the teacher rings the bell, the student goes to Dokusan or to private interview. The conventional way of seeing this is that the ringing of the bell is the cause, and the effect is that the student goes into the Dokusan room. But in Zen, we say that the world is completely interconnected and that everything happens right here, right now. So the student goes into the Dokusan room not just because the bell's been rung, but because of all actions, not just actions in this in the past, but actions in the present and future too. Because time is just a mental concept. Everything we do affects everything in the world. For this reason, none of us can do anything just by ourselves. Think of all the direct and the indirect causes that have influenced us. So the action of the student in entering the Dokusan room includes the ringing of the bell. But the ringing of the bell also includes the action of the student going into the Dokusan room. That is what we mean when we say that cause and effect are one. Every action is complete in each moment as both cause and effect. For each action is both the cause of other things and the effect of other things. In a way, right here and right now, space and time are all abstractions. What makes space and time real? You. Your very being as you are gives space and time significance. It is easy for us to understand that without space and time, we cannot survive. The reverse is also true. Without our very being, no space, no time, no history, and no world exist. In other words, our very life itself is the process of the creation of the world, of everything. This is what I mean when I tell you all the time to take good care of yourself, according to the position you have and the work that needs to be done. In doing so, you extend your practice into your daily life, unifying everything as is. If this is not happening, then make this your practice. Nothing is binding you. If you feel that something is binding you, what is it? How do you take care of it? Please have deep conviction and trust in yourself to be truly yourself. There is no other way. By doing so, you will have a very deep confidence and a respect for yourself. Going one step further, since the life of each of us contains everything, taking care of yourself is taking care of everything else. Do you see? So I'd like to end with that. And I want to thank you for your time and your attention and listening. And it occurred to me as I'm reading that, feeling helpless about the war, that Roshi would say that there are things that we can do to take care of this. So I'll leave us with that. Thank you so much.